The game just destroyed everything he built in 72 hours. People are saying he lied about Kendrick, declared himself king of LA, then admitted he was too scared to show up to the pop-out. The whole internet is watching his reputation crumble in real time, and it's brutal. Everybody thought they knew the full story. The game made some wild claims about trying to sign Kendrick Lamar back in the day. That was the version everyone repeated, just another rapper telling old war stories. But then 2Ts dropped receipts that exposed the whole thing as a lie. The internet went crazy, and instead of backing down or apologizing, the game did something nobody expected. He doubled down on everything, went on Club Shay Shay, and declared himself the best rapper on the entire West Coast, then blamed gang politics for skipping Kendrick's concert. Now the whole narrative is twisting because fans caught every single contradiction and they're tearing him apart with zero mercy. Let me break down exactly how this spiral started because the timeline is absolutely insane. It all kicked off when the game sat down for an interview and casually dropped a bomb. He claimed that back in the early 2000s, he tried to sign Kendrick Lamar to his label, said he saw Kendrick's potential before anyone else did, painted himself as this visionary who discovered greatness. The story spread fast. Hip-hop blogs picked it up. Fans debated it online. Some believed it, others questioned it, but nobody had concrete proof either way. Then 2Ts entered the chat. For anyone who doesn't know, 2Ts is deeply connected to the Compton rap scene. He's been around forever and knows everybody. When he heard the game's claims, he didn't just disagree, he came with receipts. He posted a video breaking down the entire timeline, explaining exactly why the game's story made zero sense. He pointed out that Kendrick was already building buzz through other channels, that the game didn't have the resources or connections at that specific time to sign anybody, that the whole narrative was fabricated to make himself look more important in Kendrick's origin story. The internet went nuclear. Fans online turned into investigators. They started pulling up old interviews, checking dates, cross-referencing social media posts from that era. They're slowing down frames from old footage, zooming in on details, comparing timelines like they on some CSI mission. And the more they dug, the worse it looked for the game. Nothing lined up. The dates were wrong, the context didn't match, his version of events contradicted multiple verified sources. Online detectives found inconsistencies everywhere. They discovered that during the exact period the game claimed he was trying to sign Kendrick, he was actually dealing with his own label disputes and career transitions. He wasn't in a position to sign anybody. They pulled up financial records showing his label wasn't even operational at that time. They found interviews where he never mentioned Kendrick once during years when he supposedly saw his potential. And folks online swear this was a desperate attempt to attach his name to Kendrick's legendary status. Now here's where it gets even crazier. Instead of quietly letting the controversy die down, the game decided to go on Club Shay Shay. That interview was supposed to be his redemption moment, a chance to clarify things, show maturity, maybe even admit he exaggerated. But what actually happened was the complete opposite. He didn't apologize, he didn't backtrack. Instead, he escalated everything to a whole new level. During that Club Shay Shay appearance, the game made one of the most controversial statements of his entire career. He looked directly into the camera and declared himself the best rapper on the entire West Coast. Not one of the best, not in the conversation, the best. Better than Kendrick, better than everyone. He said Kendrick can't wear his crown, that Compton belongs to him, that he's the king of LA and nobody can dispute it. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Within hours, Twitter exploded with thousands of fans calling it delusional. Reddit threads blew up with people dissecting every word. Commentary channels started making videos breaking down why that claim was so problematic. Even casual fans who barely follow hip-hop drama were weighing in. The consensus was brutal and almost unanimous. People were saying he sounded desperate, out of touch, and completely disconnected from reality. TMZ picked up the story. Hip-hop news outlets ran headlines about the backlash. Memes flooded every platform, showing the game declaring himself king while Kendrick's actual accomplishments were listed next to it. Pulitzer Prize, multiple platinum albums, the pop-out concert that became a cultural moment.
Kendrick's resume spoke for itself, and the game's claims looked increasingly hollow next to it. But wait, it gets worse. Just days after that interview, the game posted on social media trying to explain why he didn't attend Kendrick's pop-out concert. That event was a massive West Coast celebration. Every major LA rapper showed up. It was a unifying moment for the culture, and the game, who constantly claims to represent Compton in LA, was noticeably absent. Fans had been questioning why for weeks. His excuse? Gang politics. He claimed he stayed away to avoid an incident, said his presence would have caused problems, painted himself as taking the mature route by not showing up. It sounded reasonable on the surface, but the internet immediately caught the massive contradiction.
Fans started asking the obvious question: how can you declare yourself king of LA, claim Compton as your territory, call yourself the best on the West Coast, but simultaneously admit you're too scared to attend the biggest West Coast celebration in years? The logic doesn't work. Either you run LA or you're avoiding it because of safety concerns. You can't be both. Reddit threads exploded with thousands of comments calling it the weakest excuse in hip-hop history. Fans were posting side-by-side screenshots, one showing his King of LA claims, another showing his gang politics excuse. The hypocrisy was so obvious, so blatant, that even people who used to defend him started turning. Online detectives went even deeper. They found old interviews where the game talked about moving past gang politics, where he claimed he could go anywhere in LA without issues, where he positioned himself as someone who transcended that street stuff. Now he was using it as an excuse? It didn't add up, and the culture wasn't buying it. This is what panic looks like when you're losing control of your own narrative. Now let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking into place and the bigger picture becomes crystal clear. The game has been dealing with serious relevance issues for years now. His peak era was mid-2000s. Documentary and Doctor's Advocate were massive albums. He was genuinely considered one of the best coming out of the West Coast, but that momentum didn't last. His subsequent projects got less attention. His beef-heavy approach started feeling repetitive. The culture moved on while he stayed stuck in the same patterns. Think about it. These dudes went from headlining major festivals and dominating radio to fighting for scraps of attention in an oversaturated market. Back in their peak, people say the game was pulling in serious money, touring, features, endorsements, the whole package. But now he reportedly struggles to fill mid-sized venues. His streaming numbers don't compete with the new generation. His influence has drastically diminished. Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar went from Compton underdog to arguably the greatest rapper of this generation. From Good Kid M.A.A.D. City to winning a Pulitzer Prize. From battles with Drake to organizing the pop-out concert that drew tens of thousands. Kendrick's trajectory went straight up, while the game's trajectory stalled and then declined. That kind of fall-off hits different when you're watching someone from your own city surpass you by miles. And it gets worse for them when you really examine the timeline. The game has spent the last decade inserting himself into other people's narratives. He jumped into the Meek Mill versus Drake beef unprovoked. He took shots at G-Unit for years after that relationship ended. He tried to bait Eminem multiple times. He threw random subliminals at J. Cole. Every few months, it's a new target, a new controversy, a new attempt to spark attention. That pattern reveals something important. This isn't about legitimate artistic competition anymore. This is about survival, about staying visible in an industry that's moved past you, about convincing yourself and others that you still matter at the highest level. Put all that together, and it looks like the perfect recipe for desperate decision-making. Let's talk about the financial angle, because money pressure changes people. The game's legal troubles are well documented. He's faced multiple lawsuits over the years, lost a major case that cost him millions. His attempts to launch business ventures haven't produced the returns he probably expected. Meanwhile, social media shows him constantly flexing wealth, but industry insiders whisper a different story. Sources close to the situation suggest the game's lifestyle expenses far exceed his current income. That creates a dangerous cycle. You need attention to book shows. You need shows to maintain the lifestyle. You need the lifestyle to maintain the image. And when that cycle breaks down, panic sets in. You start making moves that seem irrational to outsiders, but make perfect sense when you're desperate to hold on to relevance. Now layer in the psychological component. The game built his entire identity around being a Compton legend. He tattooed the city on his body. He name drops it constantly. He positioned himself as the torchbearer for West Coast hip-hop. That identity is everything to him. And watching Kendrick Lamar take that torch without acknowledgement or permission felt like identity theft. This explains the Kendrick fixation. It's not just jealousy, it's deeper. It's watching someone eclipse you in the very role you believed was rightfully yours. It's seeing the culture celebrate them while your contributions get forgotten. It's feeling like history is being rewritten without you in it. The lying about trying to sign Kendrick makes sense through this lens. It was an attempt to insert himself into Kendrick's origin story, to make himself relevant to Kendrick's narrative, to claim some credit for Kendrick's success. It was a psychological move designed to reclaim importance, but it backfired spectacularly because the internet doesn't forget and doesn't forgive lies.
Now, add in the ego factor. The game has always had a massive ego. That's not inherently bad in hip-hop. Confidence is currency in this culture. But there's a difference between confidence and delusion. Declaring yourself the best on the West Coast while your peers and fans disagree isn't confidence, it's denial. It's refusing to accept where you actually stand in the current landscape. And that's what makes this situation so tragic, because the game genuinely believes what he's saying. This isn't calculated trolling. He actually thinks he's the king of LA. He actually believes he's better than Kendrick. That disconnect from reality is what makes every interview, every statement, every social media post feel more desperate. Industry insiders are now whispering that the game's team is scrambling behind the scenes, that his management is trying to do damage control, but he keeps making it worse, that the club Shay Shay interview was supposed to be carefully managed, but he went off script, that the gang politics excuse was a last-minute pivot after his original explanation got destroyed online. This reveals something crucial. The game isn't being poorly advised, he's unmanageable. He's making emotional decisions in real time without considering long-term consequences. That's dangerous because every move digs the hole deeper. Every interview creates more contradictions. Every claim invites more scrutiny. And here's the darkest part of the motive conversation. What if this is all intentional? Not the specific outcomes, but the controversy itself. What if the game has calculated that negative attention is better than no attention, that being dragged online still keeps his name in people's mouths, that the memes and mockery at least prove people are still talking about him? If that's the strategy, it's working in the saddest way possible. People are definitely talking about the game right now. He's trending. He's in every hip-hop discussion. Commentary channels are making videos about him. But it's not the kind of attention that builds careers. It's the kind that ends them. It's the kind that turns legends into punchlines. It's the kind that makes people remember you for all the wrong reasons. The motive is clear now. This is what happens when insecurity, financial pressure, ego, and cultural irrelevance collide. This is a man watching his legacy slip away and making increasingly desperate moves to grab it back, and every move makes it worse. But here's the part that really hits different and makes this whole situation feel deeply human underneath all the drama and entertainment value. We're watching a legacy die in real time, not because of a diss track, not because of sales numbers, but because of self-destruction. The game built something real in the mid-2000s. He contributed genuine classics to West Coast hip-hop. He had moments of lyrical brilliance. He helped keep the coast alive during a transitional period. That actually matters. That actually meant something. And now, all of that is being overshadowed by desperation and poor decisions. Think about how that must feel. You spend decades building a reputation. You put in real work. You create art that connects with people. And then you watch it all crumble, not because someone defeated you, but because you defeated yourself. That's a different kind of pain. That's the tragedy of self-sabotage. The saddest part is watching someone who used to command respect become a source of mockery. The game used to walk into rooms and get genuine reverence. He collaborated with legends. He was part of important conversations. People respected his contributions, even if they didn't love every move he made. But now, when his name comes up, it's followed by laughter, by memes, by jokes about delusion and desperation. That shift from respect to ridicule is devastating, and you can feel it in his recent behavior, the aggressive declarations, the constant need to remind people who he is, the defensiveness in every interview. These aren't the moves of someone confident in their legacy. These are the moves of someone who feels that legacy slipping away and is terrified of being forgotten. And honestly, there's something tragic about watching someone fight so hard against irrelevance that they accelerate it. Every desperate claim pushes fans further away. Every contradiction makes people take him less seriously. Every interview becomes another data point in the narrative of his decline. He's creating the exact outcome he's trying to prevent. But let's keep it real. This isn't just about the game. This is about what happens to every artist who can't adapt when their era ends. Hip-hop is a young person's game. The culture moves fast. Legends get replaced by new legends constantly, and the artists who can't accept that shift end up in exactly this position: bitter, defensive, making desperate plays for attention that backfire. The emotional weight of this situation extends beyond the game himself. Think about the fans who grew up on his music, who have documentary tattooed in their memories, who connected with his storytelling and authenticity. They're watching someone they once admired become increasingly difficult to defend. That's painful for them too. That's watching your hero fall and knowing you can't catch them. This whole spiral could have been avoided. If he'd stayed quiet after 2T's exposed the lie, it would have blown over eventually. If he'd shown up to the pop-out concert, he could have been part of that legendary moment. If he'd stopped trying to compare himself to Kendrick and just focused on his own lane, he'd still have respect. But pride and fear and desperation drove every wrong decision. And now we're here, watching a West Coast legend systematically dismantle his own legacy, watching thousands of fans turn from supporters to critics, watching the culture that once embraced him now reject him. That's the emotional core of this story. Not the drama, not the controversy, but the genuine tragedy of self-destruction. Now, let's dig even deeper into the evidence, because what's emerging is a pattern of contradictions that goes way beyond just the Kendrick situation and reveals something much more concerning about the game's current state. Fans online have been compiling comprehensive timelines. They're taking every interview from the past 5 years and fact-checking every major claim the game has made, and what they're finding is alarming. This isn't an isolated incident. This is a consistent pattern of exaggeration, contradiction, and revisionist history.
Let's start with the Eminem situation, because this is another perfect example. The game has repeatedly mentioned wanting to battle Eminem or questioning Eminem's status. He's made subtle and not so subtle references in multiple interviews. But here's what makes it weird. In older interviews, the game praised Eminem constantly, called him one of the greatest ever, expressed nothing but respect. So what changed? Why the sudden shift to subtle shots and challenge talk? Online investigators pulled up the timeline. The shift started happening right around the same period his relevance started declining, right when he needed new narratives to stay in conversations. Suddenly, Eminem's name starts coming up more frequently, not in genuine artistic discussion, but in ways designed to spark controversy and headlines. That's a pattern. Target someone more successful, create controversy, ride the attention wave. It happened with 50 Cent for years, it happened with Meek Mill, it happened with Drake peripherally, and now it's happening with Kendrick and Eminem. The formula is predictable once you see it clearly. Let's talk about the J. Cole situation too, because this one really exposes the opportunism. The game threw shots at J. Cole seemingly out of nowhere. No beef history, no logical reason, just random subliminals designed to create buzz. When fans called it out, he doubled down. When J. Cole didn't respond, because why would he, the game tried to spin it as fear or avoidance. That's textbook attention-seeking behavior. You throw shots at someone who has no reason to engage with you, then claim victory when they ignore you. It's not strategy, it's desperation disguised as confidence. Now back to the Kendrick situation, because new details keep emerging that make the game's position even weaker. Fans discovered that during the time period the game was allegedly trying to sign Kendrick, he was actually publicly beefing with people connected to Kendrick's early circle. How does that make sense? You're trying to sign someone while simultaneously beefing with their associates? The story doesn't hold water from any angle. They also found interviews where the game talked about discovering other artists during that era, never mentioned Kendrick once, not one time. If you genuinely saw someone's potential and tried to sign them, wouldn't that be something you'd mention, especially after they became successful? But there's radio silence until recently, when Kendrick's status made him a valuable name to attach to. TMZ dug into this too, and their sources confirm what fans suspected. The game's label situation during that period was chaotic. He was dealing with blood money issues, his relationship with G-Unit was deteriorating, the infrastructure to sign and develop new artists simply didn't exist. So the claim isn't just exaggerated, it's functionally impossible based on documented circumstances. The gang politics excuse for missing the pop-out is unraveling even further under scrutiny. Fans found footage of the game at other LA events during the same period, events that theoretically would have had the same gang dynamics he claimed to be worried about. But he showed up to those without issue. So what was different about the pop-out specifically? Why was that the event where gang politics suddenly became a concern? The obvious answer is that it wasn't about gang politics at all. It was about not wanting to be in a space where Kendrick was clearly the center of attention, where his status would be undeniable, where the game's presence would be secondary at best. That's what the evidence actually suggests when you examine it honestly. Reddit has compiled dozens of these contradictions into master threads. They're tracking every claim, every excuse, every revision of history, and the picture that emerges is damning. This isn't just a few mistakes or misremembered details. This is a systematic pattern of manipulating narratives to serve ego and relevance. The voice analysis folks even got involved. Some fans with audio engineering backgrounds started comparing the game's tone and delivery across different interviews. They noticed that when he talks about his actual accomplishments from his peak era, he sounds confident and natural. But when he makes these newer claims about being the best or trying to sign Kendrick, his voice gets slightly more defensive, his body language changes, he over-explains. These are psychological tells that even casual observers can pick up on once they're pointed out. Online detectives found financial records suggesting the game's current ventures aren't generating the income his lifestyle suggests. That creates questions about motive. When you need money, attention becomes currency. Controversy drives clicks. Clicks drive booking fees. It's a survival mechanism disguised as confidence. And here's what's really crazy. The more evidence fans compile, the worse it looks. Every thread leads to another contradiction. Every deep dive reveals another exaggeration. The game's entire new narrative is built on a foundation that crumbles under basic fact-checking. And because the internet never forgets, all of this is permanently documented, archived, searchable, undeniable. This is what happens when you build castles on lies. Eventually, the foundation can't support the weight and everything collapses. We're watching that collapse happen in slow motion, documented by thousands of people across every platform. And the game's responses keep making it worse because he's responding emotionally instead of strategically. The evidence is overwhelming at this point. This isn't speculation, this isn't fan theories, this is documented patterns of behavior that paint a clear picture of someone desperately trying to maintain relevance through increasingly questionable means. Now, this whole situation gets even crazier when you realize the game isn't just dealing with this Kendrick controversy. He's got multiple fronts open simultaneously, and each one is creating its own set of problems that compound the overall narrative disaster. Let's talk about the 50 Cent dynamic, because that beef refuses to die and keeps getting referenced in ways that don't help the game's current position. For years, that beef was seen as somewhat even. They both got shots in, both had moments, but recently, 50 Cent has been subtly mocking the game without even directly engaging, just posting memes, making vague references, letting his massive social media presence do the work. And because the game keeps responding emotionally, it makes him look like he's still bothered while 50 Cent has moved on to business and empire building. That contrast matters. One person is building media companies and getting TV deals. The other is online arguing about decade-old beef. The optics are terrible, and fans notice. They see who's growing and who's stagnant. That perception feeds into the larger narrative about relevance and legacy. Meanwhile, the game's attempts to launch various business ventures haven't gained the traction he probably expected. He's tried the typical rapper-entrepreneur path, clothing lines, investments, media projects, but none of them broke through to mainstream success. And in an era where rappers like Jay-Z and Diddy and even younger artists are building legitimate business empires, that failure to translate rap success into business success stands out. That creates additional pressure. When your music career slows down, you're supposed to pivot to business. That's the blueprint. But if that pivot doesn't work, you're stuck trying to squeeze more juice from the music career. That's when desperate moves start making sense. That's when you start saying controversial things just to stay visible. Let's talk about the touring situation, because this is where financial realities become undeniable. The game's venue sizes have noticeably decreased over the past few years. He went from arenas to theaters to clubs. That downward trajectory is public information. Anyone can check tour dates and venue capacities. And while there's no shame in playing smaller venues, there is a problem when your public persona doesn't match your actual market value. If you're constantly declaring yourself the king of LA and the best on the West Coast, but you can't sell out mid-sized venues, that's a credibility issue. Fans see that gap between claims and reality. It makes everything else you say seem less believable. The social media metrics tell a similar story. The game's engagement rates have dropped significantly. His posts get less interaction than they used to. His attempts to go viral often fall flat. Meanwhile, younger artists with a fraction of his supposed status are getting millions of views effortlessly. That shift in social media power dynamics reflects broader cultural shifts that he hasn't adapted to. There's also the question of features and collaborations. When's the last time a major current artist sought out the game for a feature? When's the last time he was on a genuinely buzzing song? Those opportunities dry up when the culture moves past you, and that loss of collaborative relevance is another piece of evidence that the king claims don't match reality. Some industry insiders have suggested the game's team is worried about his decision-making, but can't control him, that he goes off script in interviews, that he posts things against advice, that the people around him are trying to protect his legacy, but he's actively working against those efforts. If true, that's incredibly sad, because it means he's isolated in his delusion. The documentary he's been teasing for years still hasn't materialized in any meaningful way. That project was supposed to be a legacy-defining moment, a chance to tell his story properly, but delays and complications keep pushing it back. And now, with all this controversy, even if it does release, it'll be overshadowed by the current mess. Let's also address the ghostwriting rumors that periodically surface. These aren't new, but they keep coming up in discussions about the game's status. Whether true or not, the fact that they persist and get referenced whenever his skill is debated is problematic. Kendrick doesn't have those rumors. Eminem doesn't have those rumors. When you're declaring yourself the best, you can't have persistent questions about authenticity. The relationship with his hometown is also complicated. While the game reps Compton constantly, there's debate about how much Compton actually claims him back. In 2025, Kendrick's pop-out showed where the culture's energy is. That event was a Compton celebration, and the game wasn't part of it. That absence spoke volumes, regardless of what excuse was given. All these side stories and tangential issues create a comprehensive picture of someone whose position in hip-hop is far more tenuous than their declarations suggest. It's not one smoking gun, it's 1,000 small pieces of evidence that collectively paint an undeniable picture. And this story is still unfolding, with way bigger implications than just one rapper's career trajectory, because what we're witnessing here is a masterclass in how not to handle aging in hip-hop. What we're seeing here is how ego, unchecked by reality, creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of irrelevance. The game situation should be studied by every artist in every genre because it demonstrates exactly what happens when you refuse to adapt to your current position in the culture. Hip-hop has always been youth-driven, but there's a blueprint for aging gracefully. Jay-Z did it, Nas did it, even Eminem managed it by picking his spots carefully. The blueprint is simple. Acknowledge your legacy era has passed. Focus on quality over quantity. Be selective with collaborations. Build business ventures. Mentor younger artists. Accept your elder statesman role. The game is doing the opposite of all of that. He's fighting against time instead of working with it. The bigger conversation is about responsibility and self-awareness. When you constantly make claims that don't match reality, you're not just hurting yourself, you're unintentionally creating a narrative that damages your entire body of work. Younger fans who don't remember your peak will only know you through these desperate moments. That's tragic, because the game's actual peak deserves better than this. His situation is a warning for anybody with diminishing relevance in any field. The more you fight against the natural evolution of your career, the more desperate you look. The more desperate you look, the less people respect you. The less respect you have, the more desperate moves you make.
It's a death spiral that's incredibly difficult to escape once you're in it.
What's particularly interesting is how social media has changed the dynamics of legacy protection. In previous eras, aging rappers could fade into semi-retirement with their legends intact. The internet wasn't documenting every contradiction. Fans weren't compiling evidence threads. You could make claims and people might believe them, or at least not actively disprove them. But in 2025, everything is receipts, everything is fact-checked, everything is permanent. The game situation proves you cannot lie your way into relevance anymore. The collective intelligence of internet culture is too strong. Too many people with too much time and too many tools to verify information. If you make a claim, someone will check it. If it's false, everyone will know within hours. The old rules don't apply. There's also a conversation about mental health here that nobody wants to touch directly. The behaviors we're witnessing look like someone struggling psychologically. The constant need for validation, the inability to accept reality, the aggressive defensiveness. These are symptoms of something deeper than just ego. But in hip-hop culture, we rarely address mental health seriously until it's too late. The industry itself bears some responsibility too. Record labels and management companies often enable this behavior because controversy drives short-term revenue. They don't care about long-term legacy if they can profit from immediate chaos. So artists get encouraged to make outrageous claims and start beef because it generates clicks. Then when it backfires, those same companies disappear and the artist deals with the consequences alone. The game situation also highlights how the definition of success in hip-hop has evolved. It's not just about bars anymore. It's about cultural impact, business acumen, longevity, adaptability. Kendrick understood that evolution. The game didn't. And that failure to evolve is what creates the current dynamic where one is untouchable and the other is struggling for respect. This moment will be referenced for years whenever conversations about legacy management come up. The game is unintentionally teaching an entire generation of artists what not to do, how not to handle your decline, how not to address younger competitors, how not to use social media, how not to do interviews. It's an accidental masterclass in career suicide. So where does this end? Because we're clearly building towards something, and the tension is reaching levels that feel unsustainable. The worst-case scenario for the game is that Kendrick Lamar actually responds. Right now, Kendrick's silence is strategic and honestly more damaging than any diss track could be. That silence says you're not even worth addressing, you're beneath my attention. But if Kendrick changes his mind, if he decides the game has crossed enough lines to warrant a response, it could be absolutely catastrophic. We all saw what Kendrick did to Drake, the surgical precision, the cultural destruction, the way he turned Drake's own image against him. Now imagine that energy directed at someone with far less cultural capital than Drake, someone whose contradictions are already documented, someone whose position is already weak. It would be a massacre. The game is playing with fire and doesn't seem to realize how badly he could get burned. Every time he mentions Kendrick's name, every claim he makes, every interview where he positions himself above Kendrick, he's adding ammunition. He's creating the diss track for Kendrick if Kendrick ever decides to use it. But here's what's really dark. Even if Kendrick never responds, the game has already lost. The culture has made its decision. The memes have done their work. The contradictions are exposed. The respect is gone. Whether Kendrick says a word or not, the game's legacy is fundamentally altered from what it was just months ago. Some fans think this is all a publicity stunt for an album, that the game is creating controversy to drive interest in upcoming music. If that's the strategy, it's incredibly risky because you can't control how controversy evolves. You can start a fire for attention, but you can't always put it out before it burns everything down. Others think we're watching a genuine psychological break, that the pressure of irrelevance combined with financial stress and ego has created a perfect storm of poor decision-making, that the game genuinely believes everything he's saying and can't see how it's perceived by everyone else. That's the scariest interpretation because it suggests this will continue and potentially get worse. There's also speculation that other rappers might start piling on. The game has made a lot of enemies over the years. He's thrown shots at so many people. If the culture has decided he's an acceptable target right now, others might take their own shots. That could turn this from a Kendrick situation into an industry-wide rejection. The question everyone's asking is whether the game can recover from this. Is there a path back to respect? Theoretically, yes, but it would require complete honesty and humility, a genuine acknowledgement of mistakes, a real apology, a step back from the spotlight to rebuild credibility. But based on everything we've seen, that seems unlikely. The pattern suggests he'll continue doubling down until there's nothing left to double down on. Industry insiders are watching closely because the game situation is a test case. How does the modern hip-hop industry handle a legend who's actively destroying their own legacy? Is there intervention? Is there just passive observation? Do peers try to help privately, or do they distance themselves publicly? The answers will reveal a lot about hip-hop culture in 2025. What's clear is that we're watching an inflection point. The game will either pull back and try to rebuild, or he'll continue this path until his legacy is irreversibly damaged and the clock is ticking. Every day that passes with more contradictions and desperate claims makes recovery harder. The culture is waiting to see what happens next. Will Kendrick break his silence? Will the game say something even more outrageous? Will someone else enter the situation and make it even messier? The tension is building, and something has to give eventually.
Stay locked in because this story is about to get even crazier. And I'm telling you right now, we are not done with this situation by a long shot. More details keep dropping every single day. More fans are finding contradictions. More industry people are whispering behind the scenes. And reports say the game is playing more interviews where anything could happen. This man is unpredictable right now, and that makes every public appearance a potential moment that could shift everything. The next few weeks are critical. Will Kendrick finally break his silence? If he does, it will send shockwaves through the entire industry. Will the game make another claim that's even more outrageous than what we've already seen? Based on the pattern, that feels inevitable. Will other rappers start weighing in publicly now that the internet has made him an acceptable target? The dynamics are shifting in real time. And here's what's really wild. Even if nothing else happens, even if everyone stays silent and no new information comes out, this situation has already fundamentally changed the game's position in hip-hop culture. The damage is done. The perception has shifted. The memes have cemented a narrative that will follow him forever. So I need to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think the game can recover from this, or is his legacy permanently damaged? Do you think Kendrick should respond, or is the silence more powerful? And be honest, do you think this is a publicity stunt or a genuine meltdown? I want to know what you think, because this community always brings different perspectives. Make sure you like this video if you found it informative. Hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications so you don't miss a single update, because I'm covering every twist in this story as it develops. We're going deep on all the hip-hop drama, all the industry politics, all the cultural moments that matter. I appreciate every single one of you for rocking with me and being part of this community. The fact that you watched all the way to the end means you're really invested in this story, and I respect that energy. I'll see you in the next video where we'll break down whatever happens next in this situation. And trust me, something will happen. This isn't over. Stay safe out there, keep your eyes open, and remember, in this social media era, everything you say lives forever. Manage your legacy carefully, because the internet never forgets, and the culture moves fast. One wrong move can change everything. Peace.